The atmospheric processors hummed their eternal song through Celesta Station's main market district. Recycling air that smelled of 1,000 worlds, spiced oils from Theta Proxima, fermented grains from the outer colonies, and underneath it all, the sharp metallic temps of recycled water. Nyx moved through the crowd like a blade cutting silk. Her 7-foot frame impossible to miss even if someone tried. They didn't try. They fled. The silver skin of her Valrith heritage caught the artificial sun lamps overhead, making the bioluminescent markings along her arms pulse with a faint blue light that intensified whenever her heart rate increased. Right now, those markings were barely visible, a testament to how utterly bored she was by the predictable terror she inspired. A fruit vendor knocked over his entire display of Endorian melons in his haste to back away. The cascading purple spheres rolled across the walkway, causing a chain reaction of panic. Someone screamed. A child burst into tears. Nyx sighed through her nose, stepping carefully over the fruit without bothering to look at the trembling vendor. "The silent death walks among us," someone whispered, not quietly enough. Nyx's elongated ears twitched, catching every syllable despite the crowd's noise. The silent death. She'd heard worse names. The Valorith Reaper, the Pale Widow, the Harbinger of Dust. All earned during the Border Wars, where she'd led strike teams against the Confederation's enemies with ruthless efficiency. What the stories never mentioned was how tired she'd grown of it all. How she'd retired to this neutral station specifically, to escape the weight of her own legend. Fat lot of good that had done. She needed protein supplements and a new power cell for her personal shield generator. Simple errands. Yet the market stretched before her like a gauntlet of fear, each stall owner praying she'd walk past without stopping. Then she smelled it, something sweet and buttery that cut through the market's usual bouquet. Nyx's nose, more sensitive than human olfactory senses by a factor of 12, picked apart the layers: caramelized sugar, vanilla extract, something citrus, and underneath it all, real eggs, not synthetic. Actual eggs from actual birds. Her feet carried her toward the source. Before her mind fully processed the decision, the stall was small, wedged between a tech repair shop and a fabric merchant. Its sign, slightly crooked, read Rosewood's Risen Goods in cheerful yellow letters that had seen better days. Behind the counter, surrounded by trays of golden pastries and what appeared to be several types of bread, stood a human man who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His brown hair stuck up in at least 4 different directions. Flour dusted across his left cheek, and his apron bore the scars of countless culinary battles burn marks. Stains, and one particularly concerning rip near the hem. He was muttering to himself while aggressively whisking something in a metal bowl, his lips moving in what appeared to be either prayer or profanity. "Come on, you bastard! Emulsify," he hissed at the bowl. "I know you can do it. We've been through worse than this." Nyx cleared her throat. Most beings would have jumped, would have dropped the bowl, would have at minimum acknowledged the presence of someone whose reputation suggested she could kill them 17 different ways with just the whiskey was holding. The human didn't even look up. "You're here to tell me the health inspector is coming back?" "I literally cannot handle it right now," he said, whisking with increased violence. "I already fixed the temperature gauge. The flour is properly stored. And that thing with the cooling unit was not my fault. It was sabotaged by the noodle shop next door. I swear to every deity in the known galaxy." "I am not a health inspector," Nyx said. "Then unless you're here to buy something, I'm in the middle of preventing a buttercream catastrophe." So he finally glanced up. His eyes, a warm hazel color, met hers for exactly 2 seconds before returning to his bowl. "You'll have to wait a minute." Nyx blinked, then blinked again. Her bioluminescent markings flickered with confusion, casting brief shadows across the pastries. The human kept whisking. "Do you know who I am?" The question emerged before Nyx could stop it, and she immediately regretted the hubris it implied. "Someone who wants pastries?" The human paused his whisking long enough to grab a thermometer, checking whatever was in his bowl. Damn it, still too cold. He disappeared below the counter, the sounds of rummaging following. I've got croissants, well. Things that are legally distinct from croissants because apparently Earth has a trademark on the name, which is ridiculous. Also, turnovers, cream puffs, and something I'm calling a nebula roll, which is basically a cinnamon roll but with imported starfruit glaze. He popped back up, holding a small heating element, which he positioned under his bowl while resuming the whisking. His total lack of fear wasn't defiance or bravery, Nix realized. It was complete and utter distraction. "You are not afraid," she said, making it a statement rather than a question. "Of course I'm afraid," the human replied, finally achieving whatever consistency he'd been fighting for. He set down the whisk with a triumphant "ha!" and began spreading the mixture onto what looked like a partially assembled layer cake. "I'm afraid this buttercream won't set properly. I'm afraid my supplier is going to jack up prices again. I'm afraid that the power fluctuation 3 days ago ruined my sourdough starter that I've been maintaining for 2 years. Paused, giving her a brief, exhausted smile. "But I'm guessing you mean afraid of you specifically." "Yes," he shrugged, returning his attention to the cake with the focus of a surgeon. "Look, no offense, but I've got a business hanging by a thread. I slept maybe 3 hours last night on the floor of my kitchen because the refrigeration unit started making a noise that suggested imminent death. And I have approximately," he glanced at a chrono on his wrist, "for hours to finish this wedding cake for a very important client who could finally get my business out of debt. So unless you're planning to actively kill me in the next 4 hours, you're not even in my top 10 worries right now." Nix stared at him. In 12 years of military service and 3 years of retirement, no one had ever ranked her below their top 10 concerns. "What is your name, human?" Finn Rosewood." He gestured vaguely at the sign without looking away from his delicate frosting work. "Hence the incredibly clever shop name that I definitely didn't come up with at 3 in the morning while filling out business registration forms. I am Nix. Cool, you want a croissant, sorry? A legally distinct crescent pastry? I want to understand why you are not afraid of me." Finn finally stopped working. He set down his frosting tool, wiped his hands on his already disaster of an apron, and really looked at her for the first time. His gaze traveled from her silver skin to her markings, to the scars visible along her arms, where old wounds had healed lighter than the surrounding tissue, to the way she held herself with the coiled readiness of someone always prepared for violence. "Okay," he said slowly. "Are you about to kill me?" "No." "Are you planning to destroy my shop?" "No." "Are you going to eat all my pastries without paying?" Despite herself, Nix's lips twitched. "No." "Then what exactly should I be afraid of?" Finn spread his hands. "Look, I'm sure you're very scary to people who have reasons to be scared of you. But I'm just a baker who's had the worst month of his life, and you're just a customer who hasn't ordered yet." He paused. "You are a customer, right? You're not here to deliver bad news or serve legal documents or something?" "I smelled your pastries," Nix admitted. "Real eggs." Finn's face lit up with the first genuine smile she'd seen from him, transforming his tired features into something almost radiant. "You noticed? Yes. Everyone uses synthetic because it's cheaper and shelf-stable, but there's no substitute for the real thing. The texture, the flavor, the way they bind." He caught himself, clearing his throat. "Sorry, I get excited about ingredients. I've not had real eggs in 6 years." "Then you need to try my cream puffs." Finn was already moving, grabbing a small pastry with practiced efficiency and placing it on a recyclable plate. "These are filled with vanilla bean custard, also real, before you ask, canned, dusted with powdered sugar. On the house, because anyone who appreciates real ingredients deserves at least one free pastry in their life." Nix accepted the plate, her long fingers dwarfing it. She brought the cream puff to her nose first, inhaling deeply. Vanilla, cream, butter, sugar, simple components, creating something that smelled like the opposite of warfare. She took a bite. The pastry dissolved against her tongue, light as air but rich with butter. The custard was perfectly smooth, sweet, but not cloying, with tiny flecks of actual vanilla bean throughout. For 5 seconds, Nix forgot about her reputation, her past, the way people scattered before her like leaves before a storm. "This is exceptional," she said quietly. Finn's smile grew wider, and Nix noticed he had dimples. "Really?" "Because the last batch I made was slightly overbaked. and I've been obsessing about whether I fixed the oven temperature correctly, and he stopped himself again. You know what? Thank you. That actually means a lot. Most people just eat and leave. Most people run from me before I can eat anything. Their loss. Finn gestured to his display. You want anything else? I should warn you, I'm going to be weirdly focused on this cake for the next few hours. But you're welcome to hang around if you want. The stool by the corner is surprisingly comfortable, and honestly, having someone here who's not going to complain about me muttering to myself is kind of nice. Nix glanced at the stool, then at Finn, then at the market beyond where people were actively avoiding walking past the bakery stall because she was standing there. She should leave, should complete her errands, should return to her quiet apartment and continue her quiet life of isolation. Instead, she found herself saying, I will purchase 6 of the legally distinct crescent pastries, and I will sit. Excellent choice. Finn was already boxing up the pastries with swift, economical movements. That'll be 12 credits. And hey, Nix, yes? He met her eyes again, and there was something genuine in his gaze that she couldn't quite name. Thanks for not being one of today's catastrophes. I really needed a customer who didn't make things worse. As Nix settled onto the stool, watching Finn return to his cake with renewed focus, she realized something startling. For the first time in years, she felt seen not as the Silent Death or the Valrith Reaper, but simply as Nix. It was terrifying in an entirely new way. The thing about Celesta Station that most travelers never appreciated was its artificial day-night cycle. Every 12 hours, the sun lamps dimmed to simulate evening, casting the market district in softer amber tones that made everything look almost romantic. If you ignored the flickering advertisements and occasional spark from faulty wiring, Nix had been coming to Rosewood's Risen Goods. For 6 days straight, she told herself it was purely practical. The pastries were exceptional, made with real ingredients that her Valrith physiology could actually process without the digestive complications synthetic foods often caused. The location was convenient, situated between the supply depot and her apartment, and Finn's complete indifference to her reputation provided a refreshing change from the usual cowering. These were logical reasons. Rational reasons. They had nothing to do with the way Finn's face lit up when he successfully executed a particularly difficult technique, or how he'd started greeting her with "Hey, Nix," instead of the terrified silence she received everywhere else, or the comfortable quiet that settled between them as he worked and she read news feeds on her datapad. Nothing at all. You're going to get yourself killed, a voice announced. Shattering Nix's thoughts, a human woman had appeared beside the stall, arms crossed, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun that did nothing to soften her sharp features. She wore mechanics coveralls, stained with oil and coolant, and her brown eyes fixed on Nix with the kind of suspicion usually reserved for faulty equipment about to explode. Finn looked up from the tart he was assembling, face breaking into a grin. Portia, you're early. I thought you had that manifold repair until finished early so I could come save you from your own stupidity. Not taking her eyes off Nix. Do you have any idea who that is? That's Nix. She likes the cream puffs and has very strong opinions about proper vanilla extraction methods. It's Nix, the Silent Death, the Valrith Reaper. The woman who personally dismantled the siege of Kronos Station by walking through 3 battalions like they were made of tissue paper. Portia's voice rose with each title. That Nix. Finn blinked, glancing between Portia and Nix. Huh, that's kind of badass, actually. Nix felt her bioluminescent markings pulse. Brighter a physiological response to emotional stimulation that she'd never quite learned to control. The Valrith didn't blush, but their skin told stories anyway. Portia looked like she might have an aneurysm. Finn, she could kill you with her pinky finger. Probably my whole hand, Nix corrected mildly. The pinky finger lacks sufficient leverage. I would need at least 3 fingers, or perhaps my thumb and index finger if I utilize pressure points correctly. Portia stared at her. Finn started laughing, a genuine warm sound that made something in Nix's chest feel oddly tight. See? Finn said to Portia. She's helpful. Very educational, he turned to Nix. Could you really kill someone with just 3 fingers? In approximately 47 different ways, depending on the target's anatomy. That's horrifying, Portia said. That's amazing, Finn said simultaneously. They looked at each other. Portia threw up her hands. Fine. Fine. When she murders you, and I have to identify your body, I'm going to say, I told you so, at your funeral. If she murders me, you have permission to be insufferable about it. Finn wiped his hands on his apron and gestured to Portia. Nix, this is Portia Quinn, my business partner, and the reason this stall has functioning refrigeration. Portia, this is Nix, who is apparently famous and terrifying, but also appreciates good pastry. Business partner? Nix asked. Portia's expression softened slightly as she looked at Finn. He's too nice to call it what it is. I own 40% of this disaster. I fix things. He breaks things and occasionally produces edible miracles. Mostly, he breaks things. The oven incident was 1 time, 3 times. Okay, 3 times. But who's counting? Finn grinned at Nix. Portia and I served together on a colony transport. She kept the ship running. I kept the crew fed. When we mustered out, we figured we'd try the business thing. How is the business progressing? Nix asked, though she'd already surmised the answer from the worn equipment and Finn's perpetual exhaustion. Finn and Portia exchanged a look. We're working through some challenges, Finn said diplomatically. We're drowning in debt and about 6 weeks from bankruptcy, Portia translated. Finn's too proud to admit it. But our supplier jacked up prices, the station raised stall fees. And we've got a loan from a very unpleasant individual named Torvin Bleck, who's been making increasingly threatening noises. About payment, Nix's markings pulsed brighter, shifting from blue to a deeper violet, the color of interest shading into anger. This Torvin Bleck threatens you. Not physically, Finn said quickly. Just financially. He owns half the businesses on this level. Legal loan shark situation. The legality is debatable, Portia muttered. Last week he sent his associates to remind us about payment schedules. They broke Finn's storage containers. They were old containers, Finn protested. They were the only containers we could afford, Nix stood. Her full height, making both humans instinctively step back, though Finn caught himself and held his ground. Where does one find this Torvin Bleck? Oh no, Portia said. Absolutely not. We are not sixing a legendary warrior on our loan shark. That's how you end up with station security involved in intergalactic incidents. I would be discreet. You glow in the dark. Nix looked down at her markings, currently pulsing with violet light. This is a fair point. Finn was watching her with an odd expression, something between amusement and wonder. You were actually going to threaten a loan shark for me? He damaged your property. This is unacceptable. That's... Finn trailed off, a slight flush creeping up his neck. That's really sweet, actually. Terrifying, but sweet. Portia made a strangled noise. I'm going to check the cooling units before I witness something that scars me permanently. Finn, try not to fall in love with the deadly warrior. We have enough problems. She stalked off, toward the back of the stall. Muttering about impossible situations and idiot best friends, an awkward silence settled. Finn cleared his throat, returning to his tart assembly with perhaps more focus than necessary. Nix sat back down on her stool, acutely aware of how the word love seemed to hover in the air between them like an unexploded ordnance. She's protective, Finn finally said. Lost her brother in the border wars? She doesn't trust easily. A reasonable response to trauma, Nix replied. Then, carefully, I was at the siege of Kronos Station. The stories are mostly accurate. Want to talk about it? No, okay? Finn arranged candied citrus peels on the tart with steady hands. Want to hear about the time I accidentally made a wedding cake with salt instead of sugar, and didn't realize until the bride took the first bite? Despite herself, Nix smiled. Yes. For the next hour, Finn told stories, some funny, some disasters. All delivered with self-deprecating humor that made the failures sound like adventures. Nix found herself sharing occasional details of her own past, carefully edited but honest. She told him about Valrith foodways, about the crystallized honey from her home province. about the way her mother could make simple grain porridge taste like celebration. She didn't tell him about the wars, about the things she'd done that earned her reputation, about the nightmares that still sometimes woke her, gasping, reaching for weapons that weren't there. Not yet. As the station's lights dimmed toward evening cycle, Portia emerged from the back storage area. Cooling units are stable. I'm heading out before the last transport to level 7. Finn, don't stay too late. You need sleep more than you need to perfect those tarts. Yes, Mom, Finn said automatically. Portia pointed at Nyx. I'm still suspicious. But if you're going to keep hanging around, you might as well make yourself useful. Finn won't ask for help because he's stubborn. But we need someone to pick up a flour shipment from Dock 12 tomorrow at 0600 hours. It's 200 pounds of grain products, and neither of us can lift it without mechanical assistance. I can lift 200 pounds, Nyx said. See? Useful. Portia grabbed her tool bag. I'll meet you there. 0600 hours sharp. Don't be late. She left before Nyx could respond. Finn chuckled. That's Portia speak? For I approve, but I'm going to pretend I don't. She likes you. She threatened to identify your corpse. She does that when she likes people. You should hear what she says about people she actually dislikes. Finn started cleaning his workstation with practiced efficiency. You don't have to help tomorrow. She shouldn't have volunteered you. I will be there. Finn paused, meeting her eyes. In the dimmed station lighting, his face was half shadow, making him look older, more serious. Can I ask you something? Yes. Why do you keep coming here? And don't say it's just the pastries. Nyx considered lying. Considered deflecting. Considered all the tactical responses she'd learned over years of military service. Instead, she said, you were the first person in 3 years who has looked at me and seen someone worth talking to instead of something to fear. The words hung between them. More vulnerable than Nyx had intended. Finn's expression softened, and he stepped closer, not so close as to be improper, but near enough that she could smell flour and vanilla and something uniquely him. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I think the rest of the galaxy is missing out. You're pretty interesting when you're not being the silent death. I am always the silent death. It is not a role I can remove like a uniform. No, but you're also other things. You're someone who knows 17 different vanilla extraction methods. Someone who listens to my ridiculous stories. Someone who is ready to threaten a loan shark for someone you barely know. He smiled, and it reached his eyes. You contain multitudes, Nyx. Don't let your reputation convince you otherwise. Nyx's markings cycled through colors she couldn't control, blue too violet to a soft pink that she'd only seen once before. In her youth, during a courtship she'd thought long forgotten. The bioluminescence of attraction, unmistakable to anyone who knew Valrith physiology. Finn, blessedly, was human. He didn't know what the colors meant. I should go, Nyx said, standing abruptly. The evening patrols will be changing soon. It is easier to navigate the station during transitions. Right, yeah. Finn stepped back, rubbing the back of his neck. See you tomorrow? 600 at Dock 12? I will be there. Nyx left quickly, aware that her markings were still glowing soft pink, broadcasting feelings she wasn't ready to examine. Behind her, she heard Finn humming something light, cheerful that followed her into the station's corridors. She was definitely in trouble. The next morning, Nyx arrived at Dock 12 at 05 for 5 hours. Because Valrith military training died hard, Portia was already there. Sitting on a cargo container and drinking something steaming from a thermos. You're early, Portia observed. Punctuality is a virtue. Portia took a long sip of her drink, studying Nyx with unsettling intensity. Listen, I'm going to be direct because that's how I operate. What are your intentions with Finn? I do not understand the question. Yes, you do. You're a warrior, not an idiot. Finn is the best person I know. He's kind, he's talented, and he has absolutely zero self-preservation instincts when it comes to people he cares about. He will give you everything he has and never ask for anything back. I would not take advantage, I know. That's the only reason we're having this conversation, instead of me figuring out how to poison someone with silver skin. Portia's expression softened slightly. I've seen the way he looks at you. I've also seen the way you look at him when you think no one's watching. Your skin does this thing. I am aware of what my skin does, so you know this is heading somewhere. Nyx was quiet for a moment. In the distance, cargo loaders hummed, and a ship was powering up its engines with a rising whine. I have not been heading somewhere with anyone in 8 years. I do not know if I remember how. Finn doesn't need perfect. He needs honest. Portia stood, brushing off her coveralls. Just don't hurt him. Not because I'll come after you. We both know how that would end. But because he deserves better than another person who leaves. Another person? Story for another time. Or better yet, ask him yourself. Novel concept. I know, actually talking to the person you're interested in. Portia checked her datapad. Shipment should be here in 5 minutes. You really can lift 200 pounds? Yes, good, because I lied to Finn, it's actually 300 pounds. I wanted to see if you'd actually show up. Despite everything, Nyx smiled. You are protective of him. Someone has to be. Portia paused. For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. He's been lighter this past week than I've seen him in months. Be careful with that. Happiness is fragile. Shipment arrived, and Nyx lifted all 300 pounds without visible strain, much to the delivery driver's amazement. She and Portia transported it back to the stall in companionable silence. And when they arrived, Finn was already there, setting up for the day. His face lit up when he saw them. You actually came. I wasn't sure if Portia scared you off. I am not easily frightened, Nyx said. Finn grinned. Yeah, I'm starting to get that, as Nyx helped unload the flour. Carefully following Finn's instructions about storage and organization, she caught Portia watching them with an expression that might have been approval, might have been resignation, might have been hope. Whatever it was, it made Nyx think that maybe, just maybe, she was heading somewhere after all, and for the first time in 8 years, that didn't terrify her. It felt like possibility.